4 years ago, at 24 years old, I made one of the biggest financial decisions of my life. I bought a studio apartment in Manhattan for $600,000. And ever since then, I've always wondered, did I make the right choice? Should I have just rented and invested that money instead? Well, let's take a deeper look in this video at the cost of buying versus renting the apartment back then and whether I would do the same thing again today. So first, let's take a look at how much I actually spent on this apartment. Like a lot of people, I took on a mortgage to help with financing my home. For me, the total price of the apartment was $600,000 and I put 25% down, meaning I took a mortgage of $450,000. And with every real estate purchase, you also have to pay real estate taxes and legal fees, and that turned out to be $16,690. Making a grand total of $166,690 spent. Now let's take a look at what I would have made if I had invested that into the S&P 500. For the purpose of this video, we're going to use SPY. It's the popular ETF that tracks the S&P 500. So in July of 2021, SPY was trading at around $445. 4 years later, in July 2025, it's closed at $625. That's a 40% gain over 4 years. If I had taken my $166,690 and put it into SPY back then, that's a gain of $73,000 or about $18,250 per year. Now let's talk about if I had invested that into a high growth stock like Nvidia, and this is where things get a little bit crazy. In July of 2021, Nvidia was trading at roughly $190 per share, but this is pre-split. So post-split, it's actually trading at $19 per share. By July 2025, it's hit $159 post-split. So with stock splits and astronomical growth, it's actually returned over 600% during that time. If I had put $166,690 into Nvidia back in 2021, I would have made over $1 million. Today, I would have a grand total of $1.26 million from that investment. Of course, hindsight is 2020. Nvidia skyrocketed a lot more than other stocks did, and there's no way I would have known that. Now let's take a look at Bitcoin. Back in July 2021, Bitcoin was trading at around $30,000. Today, it's trading at over $108,000. That's roughly a 260% increase. If I'd invested my $166.7K into Bitcoin, that's a $468,000 gain or about $117,000 per year. Again, would I have held it through all of that volatility? Who knows? Now let's take a look at a more conservative way of how I might have invested that money. Let's say I put it into a money market fund. Over the past 4 years, rates for money market funds have hovered at about 4.5%. If I had parked my $166.7K into a money market fund, compounding annually at 4.5%, that's a gain of $33,000 in total, or about $8,300 per year, which is not bad for a fairly low risk option. So here's how things stack up. The S&P 500 would have been a $73,000 gain, Nvidia would have been a $1.08 million gain, Bitcoin a $468,000 gain, and the money market fund a $33,000 gain. So those would have been my investment gains, but what about my actual monthly costs? Let's break it down. So firstly, back in 2021, interest rates were a lot lower than they are today. In 2021, my mortgage rate was 2.65%. That's unheard of in today's market. And so as a result, I pay $1,807 every month towards my mortgage. Next, I have my HOA fees or my homeowners association fees. Because I live in an apartment, there are joint fees that I have to pay with the rest of the residents, and this comprises of $507 per month. Next, for real estate taxes, I pay $467 per month. Home insurance is $77 per month, and this makes for a grand total of $2,852 per month. Meanwhile, I took a look at comparable studio apartments in the area, apartments that were similar to mine that had a doorman, had laundry and a gym in unit, and was a high-rise building. And those apartments in the city for a studio of a similar size typically started at around $3,600. And for the comparison's sake of this video, we're going to use the $3,600 figure. So on a pure cash basis, I was saving about $748 per month. But we need to factor in the opportunity cost that we were calculating before. Let's use the S&P 500 as an example because that's very likely what I would have parked that money into. So with the $166,690 that I had used to do my down payment and my legal fees, I would have earned about $18,250 per year in the S&P 500, which is about $1,520 per month that I'm losing out on buying that apartment. So my real monthly cost of ownership is actually $2,852 plus my opportunity cost of $1,520. That makes up $4,372 per month, which means renting actually would have been cheaper by about $772 per month if you include the opportunity cost. However, that's not all. Each month, an average of $1,250 goes towards paying down my principal. Like I said before, my mortgage is $1,807. Part of that is used towards paying off the interest rate of 2.6%, and part of that is used towards paying down my principal of $450,000. For me, it averages out to about $1,250 per month that's actually used towards paying myself back. So in order to get the most accurate calculation, we're going to have to take out $1,250 from the monthly amount. So if we subtract that amount, the effective monthly cost was more like $4,372 minus $1,250, in which you get $3,122 per month. And that would mean that I'm able to save over $400 per month by buying instead of renting. So let's play out one last scenario. What if I were to make the same purchase today in today's interest rate environment? Would it still be worth it? So back when I bought the apartment in 2021, interest rates were 2.625%. Today, the interest rate for a 30-year fixed rate loan is 6.75%. So if I were to put a 25% down payment on the same $600,000 apartment, that would be a 6.75% interest rate on a $450,000 loan. This would mean a mortgage payment of $2,919 per month. That's over $1,100 more than what I currently pay. And if I were to add in the same HOA fees, real estate taxes, and insurance, I would get a total figure of $3,964 per month. Now compare that to renting a similar studio at $3,600 per month. Without even adding an opportunity cost, you're already paying more. Now, if you were to include the opportunity cost of investing into the S&P 500 of $1,520 per month, and lastly, we'll need to take out the amount that we're paying towards ourselves. Since the loan is still $450,000, the principal we're paying back towards ourselves is still the same every month at $1,250 per month. So, as you can see, if you are to buy a house today, it actually isn't worth it compared to renting because you're going to be paying more than the $3,600 we had set aside for renting that same apartment. The math definitely doesn't look as favorable as it did in 2021. However, that's not to deter you and say that you shouldn't be buying in this environment. Housing prices tend to go down in high interest rate environments, so the same $600,000 condominium that I bought 4 years ago is probably worth around the same today and hasn't increased in price much just because interest rates have been going up so much. So there's a lot of variables at play here, and buying a house versus renting really isn't necessarily always a financial decision. It's very much a personal one as well, and it depends on what your own goals and plans are. For me, was it worth it? I think so. It brought me a lot of stability. I didn't have to worry about rent hikes or having a landlord. And honestly, if I was chasing returns, yeah, Nvidia and Bitcoin would have made me a lot more had I invested them back in 2021. But would I have put $166K into both or either of them? Likely not. And the most likely scenario is that I would have then just invested it into the S&P 500 and rented it instead, which, as we've seen, in the long run on a monthly cost basis, it is not worth it. Let me know down in the comments below, would you rather own or would you rather rent and then invest that money? Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video.